Welcome to Engadget's weekly roundup of video game news. I'm Jessica Condit. Here's what's going on in games right now. Xbox is preparing to address a bunch of rumors on Thursday about the company's plans to bring its exclusive games to PlayStation, Switch, and other platforms. The rumors have centered on major releases like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and Starfield, but according to The Verge's Tom Warren, the first titles scheduled to make the leap are Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but Xbox's top gaming executives, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty, will chat all about it on the next installment of the official Xbox podcast, which drops at 3 p.m. ET on Thursday. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot said on an investor call last week that the studio is officially going to make good games again. Talking about the company's positive third quarter, Guillemot said it marks the beginning of our turnaround to consistently creating and delivering high-quality, long-lasting games, which sounds like a tacit admission that Ubisoft hasn't been producing great games recently. This is something I've talked about a lot. It feels like the studio has been coasting on NFTs and free-to-play mobile titles since a period of financial turmoil in 2015, and I'm actually excited to see a return to its weird, more focused roots. Assassin's Creed Mirage and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown were great first steps. Ubisoft plans to reveal more details about Star Wars Outlaws, the new Assassin's Creed set in Japan, and its mobile lineup in May. The game industry is out of step with contemporary media in terms of LGBTQ representation, and it is failing its LGBTQ customers. That's one of the breakout lines from GLAAD's first annual gaming report, which analyzes the state of the video game industry from the perspective of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender players in the United States. In its survey, GLAAD, the world's largest LGBTQ media advocacy group, found that 17% of the total gaming audience identifies as LGBTQ, or about 1 in every 5 players. This figure falls in line with statistics for Gen Z. Still, just 2% of all games on the market contain LGBTQ content, a saturation level that falls miserably short of those in film, TV, and other forms of media. GLAAD ran the numbers itself. In November 2023, the Xbox Store had 146 games with LGBTQ content, while PlayStation offered a list of 90 titles with these themes, and the Switch eShop had 50 games tagged LGBT. Steam had 2,302 English-language games under its LGBTQ+ tag, but that figure dropped to 1,506 when filtering out adult-only sexual content titles. All told, queer games composed roughly 2% of the store's libraries. In contrast, GLAAD found that almost 1 in 3 films from the top distributors in 2022 contained an LGBTQ character, and these characters appeared as series regulars in 10% of primetime scripted broadcast shows in 2022 and 2023. GLAAD Associate Director of Gaming, Blair Durkee, said that with queer representation at just 2%, gaming remains woefully behind other entertainment industries. The report also tried to identify why this gap exists. It suggested some developers simply don't think about including LGBTQ people, or they worry about pushing away a core audience that they assume is hostile toward LGBTQ content. However, the report says, this imagined core audience is a myth, considering LGBTQ people compose nearly 20% of the market on their own. Critically, GLAAD found that more than 60% of non-LGBTQ players weren't bothered by queer protagonists in their games, and 70% said they were fine with titles that presented the option to play as an LGBTQ character. So this type of representation doesn't bother most straight cisgender people, but it means a lot to LGBTQ players. 72% of LGBTQ players said that seeing characters of their gender identity or sexual orientation portrayed well made them feel better about themselves, and this number was even higher among younger players. Overall, 36% of LGBTQ players reported that video games helped them discover their sexual orientation or gender identity, and this percentage rose to 41% among LGBTQ players of color. More than 40% of queer players said that video games helped them cope with the lack of acceptance in the real world. These issues are more prominent than ever amid an avalanche of anti-LGBTQ legislation. Already in the first few weeks of 2024, more than 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been proposed or passed in the US, a majority of which target transgender youth. While GLAAD found that 66% of all LGBTQ gamers said they use gaming to express themselves in ways they don't feel comfortable doing in the real world, this statistic rose to 75% for players living in states with proposed or active anti-LGBTQ bills. The real key is that more gamers identify as LGBTQ than ever before, and resistance toward these themes is waning with each new generation of players. I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and I can say that overall, the GLAAD report rings true. It feels like the industry is saturated with games that weren't made for me, and there's an immense joy that comes with discovering a new title that speaks to my own life, or lets me play in a world that doesn't involve traditionally straight male power fantasies. Queer people have fantasies too, and the GLAAD report highlights how forgotten these stories have been in games. It's not a matter of LGBTQ people asking for all games to be gay. We just want proportional access to fantasy and escape. Personally, I'd love to see more LGBTQ people in positions of authority in video games, a recommendation that GLAAD makes in its report as well. And really quickly, because I can already hear the keyboards melting, woke ideas will not destroy the gaming industry, but stagnation will. And as the GLAAD report points out, we're much closer to that reality than anything else. From Software's parent company has acquired Acquire, the team behind Octopath Traveler. The FTC accused Microsoft of lying about its intentions with Activision Blizzard after enacting a huge round of layoffs at the end of January, and the FTC is continuing to investigate potential antitrust issues around the acquisition. Microsoft responded by saying its plans changed, so there. Microsoft's gaming layoffs included 86 jobs at Skylanders developer Toys for Bob, effectively shutting down the studio. Children of the Sun is a dark and trippy puzzle game that makes shooting a mechanic of elegance. Players find an angle, set up the shot, and then control the path of a single bullet as it takes out every enemy on screen. This is my kind of shooter. Children of the Sun is available on Steam as a demo only for now, and it comes from solo developer Renee Rother, published by Devolver Digital. Thanks for watching. Hopefully next week I'll have my green screen working again, but I hope you've enjoyed this peek at my physical world. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to Engadget for your weekly dose of video game news.